2 weeks into the season, and the Carolina Panthers have already pulled the plug on Bryce Young. It's now Andy Dalton time. Does this mean it's already over for Young here in Carolina? We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube, where I am live right now and live after every Carolina Panthers game or whenever there's big breaking news like there has been the last 2 Mondays here in Carolina. Or you can check out the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, or check out any live episodes over in your YouTube feeds. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. And plenty of you ask me questions about the quarterback situation in Carolina. So go ahead and either at me or DM me to send me in a different question, as we already have our answer to that question on today's show. And I'm going to talk a lot about the decision to bench Bryce Young on the show. So please either at me or DM me. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for this weekly Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers on tomorrow's show. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Wow. I am surprised. The Carolina Panthers, after 2 weeks, have benched their number 1 overall pick from a year ago, their starting quarterback, Bryce Young. And he was terrible on Sunday in that home opening loss to the Chargers. He was terrible the week prior on the road against New Orleans. The offense was inept because the quarterback was terrible. And I told y'all the last 2 games, I'm not going to sit up here and defend the way he played, because Bryce Young was awful. I sat here, though, and said I didn't feel like it made a lot of sense after 1 week, after 2 weeks, to move on from Bryce Young. I did not expect the Carolina Panthers, who fired Frank Reich after 11 games last year because they felt like Young wasn't being developed properly, then fired Scott Fitterer, who traded all those assets, including DJ Moore, and let's go back to the fall prior, Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco. Some of the picks they used that to move up to get Bryce Young. So they gave up McCaffrey and DJ Moore in order to get the number 1 overall pick and select Bryce Young to solve their quarterback problem here in Carolina. So they got rid of Scott Fitterer, brought in Dan Morgan from down the hallway, hired Dave Canales, who had worked wonders with Geno Smith in Seattle, then last year with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, brought those 2 guys in to be the new brain trust, along with Brant Tillers coming over from Kansas City. Then they went out and spent a lot of money on the offensive line that was banged up last year. They got rid of Bozeman. They got rid of some of the other guys out there, brought in Robert Hunt for $100 million, brought in Damian Lewis for a bunch of money, moved Corbett to center, then traded for Deontay Johnson. Went out and traded up to the first round to get Xavier Legette, got Jonathan Brooks, made all of these moves to help Bryce Young. Then after 2 games of this experiment with Dave Canales, the supposed quarterback whisperer, they're moving on. So yeah, I'm surprised that based off of all that they have done over the course of the last 10 months, that they've decided that after 2 games where Bryce was terrible, I am not arguing against that fact, that they're done with it, that they are no longer needing to see anything more from Bryce Young for the time being. And we'll get into the comments that Dave Canales had. I really don't understand why this organization even has press conferences when things like this happen, because David Tepper never answers why he fired Frank Reich or Matt Rule. We know why, but he never answered why that happened. Dave Canales did not even tell us why he decided to move on from Bryce Young, other than this gives us the best opportunity to win on Sunday. Not to say it gives them the best opportunity to win next week or moving forward, just this Sunday, they're focused on the Raiders and that road trip. So I'm surprised that they benched Bryce Young. And quite honestly, I feel like given everything that they did to try and put a better team around Bryce, kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Why you spent all this time trying to fix everything around him and you gave up after 2 weeks? Because if you were going to do this, if you thought if Bryce Young comes out and plays terribly, we're going to move on after 2 games, why did you have him be your quarterback in the first place? It kind of goes back to a couple years ago. After a 1-4 start, they move on from Matt Rule. He had already been terrible the first 2 years. If you were going to move on, and the whole caveat of he can stay to get a rock star OC, which was never going to happen, why even bring him back? So that's just one thing that never makes sense to me, whether it's in the NFL and whatever it is. Why, after a couple of weeks into the season, you abandon ship from someone who's already embattled in the first place? Like, if you didn't believe in him, then why was he out there week 1 in New Orleans and in this past Sunday against the Chargers? So that's the one thing that just I don't really understand. But this is an organization that makes no sense at all. And probably for the sake of the locker room and the health of the team, this is probably the right decision. Long-term for the Carolina Panthers, is the right decision? I guess we'll have to find out depending upon who they bring in next, because they have not given any of these quarterbacks any sort of opportunity or pieces around them to actually have success when they're here in Carolina. So hard for me to believe moving forward under David Tepper's ownership that anything's going to change. But Bryce Young clearly has no confidence, did not look comfortable in a pocket. And I looked at the Pro Football Focus numbers. He was kept clean 86% of the time yesterday and had 84 yards. That's just brutal. You can't win with the guy who's inaccurate, who's turned the football over, who does not look confident at all. So when that's a problem, when he's not confident with a clean pocket, he's not accurate, he's turning the football over, yeah, eventually you got to make a decision. You got to move on. I would have felt like they would have maybe wanted to see it through a little bit longer, but they decided that they had seen enough. So first off, after all that I've just said there, like, yeah, Bryce is off for the first 2 weeks. And after watching the frustration from Adam Thielen on Sunday, it kind of felt like the Panthers had already reached the breaking point 2 weeks into the season when Deontay Johnson is also talking to the media, being asked, are you surprised you guys have not taken any shots down the field? And he said, yeah, I'm surprised. I don't call the plays. We just got to put things on film, making it sound like I'm only going to be here for 1 year anyways. But yeah, that's not ideal. When your 2 starting receivers, the top 2 guys that you have here to help out your quarterback, are showing those signs of visible frustration 2 weeks into the season, and that there are boos in the crowd. I saw Scott Fowler mention this because he's been here since the beginning. Never has he ever been to a home opener, whether it was at Clemson or here at Ericsson Stadium, now known as Bank of America Stadium. Never had he ever seen the fans booing the team on the first game of the season at home, or in the first game of the season at home, week 2, and there were boo birds, and plenty of players had something to say about it. And I understand their frustration. You got to play better. It comes with the territory, but that's how toxic things have become here in Carolina, mainly because all the decisions that David Tepper has made, but also because the quarterback clearly does not look like somebody who at this point in time, if ever, can play at the NFL level. And I was holding out hope that they keep playing him. He finally gain some confidence, trust what is around him, what he sees, and looks like the guy that we saw during training camp and the glimpses that we saw last year. And I come back to the Packers game. Clearly, that was an anomaly based off of everything else that we've seen through the 18 games of Bryce Young being the starting quarterback in Carolina. But they decided that with Adam Thielen being frustrated, Johnson being frustrated, just how inept the offense was, where through the first 2 games of the season, franchise low, 13 points, 345 yards, that this was just not something that they could continue to do. They had to move on. They had to pull the plug after 2 weeks into the Dave Canales help Bryce Young experiment. Number 2, I don't think that they're going to go back to him after this. Canales would not answer whether this was going to be for this week or beyond. I just don't see how, after 18 games, after all that they did to feasibly help Bryce Young this offseason, that after pulling the plug 2 weeks into it, that they're going to go back. I don't know how you build someone's confidence with them sitting on the bench. If anything, just going back and looking at everything the Panthers have done as far as Bryce Young's development, clearly he should have sat last year. They weren't working on the fundamentals like his footwork. They're more focused on just getting him ready to play so that they could see whether they made the right investment, which, yeah, looks like they made the wrong investment. And a lot of y'all have felt like that for a very long time. I was willing to at least see it through until they came to this conclusion or this decision, which now makes it very obvious that they chose the wrong guy, and they should have probably taken CJ Stroud, obviously, even though let's not play revisionist history. Plenty of people who cover the NFL draft, and y'all know me, I am not a draft guy at all. But plenty of those people were talking about how Bryce Young was a top one on their board. There's reports out that the Texans would have taken Bryce Young. So we can sit here, try to pretend that everyone was on CJ Stroud. Now, there was thoughts just from Peter King, just thinking Frank Reich's always had a tall quarterback. He's always had guys this size. He's going to take CJ Stroud. At no point has there ever been any actual credible reporting. That was just Peter King assuming, not reporting, just assuming that's what the Panthers were doing when they traded up to number 1. So I just don't see how they're going to go back to him. 18 games in, you brought a new head coach, new general manager from down the hallway, new weapons, offensive line's been improved, and you said, yeah, we've seen enough. You're not going to build his confidence now. He didn't have it to begin with after last season's beating, didn't have it the first 2 weeks, and now you sat him on the bench, and apparently saw a report out there that Bryce Young was surprised by this news. So clearly he didn't think that this was going to be it after a couple weeks. So I can't imagine he's going to come back from this. And just how toxic things have been, an owner who's never patient, I just don't feel like he's going to come back. And that David Tepper had to be a part of this decision. And I've said this before, number 3, I mean, starting Andy Dalton doesn't do anything for the Panthers in the interim or in the long term. Like, they're still going to lose games because I've talked about they've only scored 13 points and had 345 yards in the first 2 week franchise lows to begin a season. They've also given up 73 points. They're almost giving up 200 yards on the ground per game. The defense stinks. So the defense is not going to get better with Derek Brown being out. Maybe they get a little bit healthier, but that edge rush was terrible. Jadeveon Clowney was the lowest graded defender according to PFF on Sunday in that loss against the Chargers. You have a team, and J.C. Horn said it, if you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything in this league, and they can't stop the run. So I don't see how they're going to stop anything. So Andy Dalton comes in, probably gives him a better chance to win just based off of what we've seen over the course of the 13 years prior of Andy Dalton being quarterback in the NFL, mainly being a starter, and what we even saw from him last year, what we've seen from Bryce Young. Don't necessarily doubt that he gives him a better chance to win. I just don't think it's going to lead the Panthers to not be still in the top 5. I don't think it's going to have them being a playoff contender because they've been awful on defense and special teams in these first 2 weeks of the season anyways, and there's not much reason to believe either one of those is actually going to change because they put in Andy Dalton as their quarterback. Now, the offense probably going to look a little bit better, I would think, but everywhere else on the roster, still bad. And then I guess lastly here, I felt like the season was about Bryce Young. I felt like last year was when you bring him in, you give up all that you gave up to get him, and you bring in this coaching staff that's supposed to be this rock star coaching staff, supposed to work at the quarterback, and you move on from Frank Reich. And you brought in Dave Canales and did all the things I said before that they did this offseason to help Bryce. I felt like this year was about Bryce. And the Panthers, at least Dave Canales, came out and said on Monday that no, this is not about Bryce Young. This is about the Carolina Panthers. It's about trying to win football games this year. That's what it's about. And that's a decision that he says he made, but I'm no fool. We know who made this decision. It's the same guy who made a decision to take Bryce Young in the first place. And the main problem here in Carolina, and his name is David Tepper, and as long as he's around, we're going to continue to have these conversations here, unfortunately, because he is the worst owner in the NFL, and we are all hostages here in Charlotte, hoping that one day a coconut hits him on the head and a guy realizes, oh, I'm the problem. Let me stop screwing everything up. All right, let's take a quick pause, and we'll come back, talk more about this decision. 513 people live with me right now on YouTube. Thank you to every single one of you here. Hold on with me. Got to pay the bills. Got to make money somehow. That's by doing these ad reads. I got to do this in just a moment. Come back, talk more about the Panthers sidelining Bryce Young. They say temporarily, but definitely permanently here on Locked On Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Football season is back, and the best way to get to games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to say more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. The Carolina Panthers have benched Bryce Young. He will not be the starting quarterback for Sunday's road matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, and I do not believe he will be the starting quarterback again for the Panthers unless Andy Dalton is injured. The Panthers after the season will go try to find another quarterback, and maybe they'll get it right this time, but I have a hard time believing that will be the case. Why? Because David Tepper is the owner. Adam Schefter of ESPN.com tweeted this out saying the decision to bench former number 1 overall pick Bryce Young is said to have come from head coach Dave Canales, general manager Dan Morgan, and executive vice president Brant Tillis. As one source said, Dave Canales' first big boy decision. Does anyone believe that to be true? Does anyone believe that David Tepper and his wife, Nicole, who fell in love with Bryce Young during that dinner in Tuscaloosa where they asked Bryce Young, take us through your daily routine leading up to game day. And he went through every single minute, second, and hour leading all the way up to Saturday game time in Tuscaloosa or wherever they were playing in the SEC. And right then and there, they were in love. You really think that David Tepper, who had to sign off on them going into number 1 overall, who wanted to clearly be number 1 overall so that the entire NFL world would be focused on the Panthers for once in his time here for a month straight, really 2 months straight, because that was on March 10th back in 2023 when they made that decision. He wanted all the attention on him, on his franchise, on the Panthers. That's why he went to number 1. Because of his ego, and also because he has no patience when it comes to quarterback development and roster building since having taken over here in Carolina. And this is just another example of just how unserious this organization is, whether it's right or wrong to bench Bryce Young, because there's plenty of reasons to not do it and to do it. Like to do it because he's been awful. Like the offense is inept, and it's not like it's just this year. I talked about last week, we can't just look at this in a vacuum. When someone like Jordan Matthews says it's not a continuation, yeah, dude, it is for a lot of people that have been here and a lot of guys actually on the roster who have continued to lose throughout their entire tenure with the Carolina Panthers. What we had seen from Bryce looked a lot like last year, but also worse than last year. So there are reasons why to make this decision and also reasons why not to. Like you invested a ton, you brought in a new head coach, brought in all these weapons, maybe give it a little bit more time to see like truly, is it something you can salvage? But they cut bait. And just how this has worked out, whether right or wrong, just shows just how unserious Carolina Panthers organization is under David Tepper. He's clearly the one who wanted Bryce Young, and he's clearly the one after 2 weeks who decided, nope, seen enough. I'm pissed off. We got to make a change. Bring in the red rifle. It's Tepper, man. It ain't Dave. It ain't Dan. It ain't Brant. It's David Tepper. He's the problem and will continue to be the problem here in Carolina, and why I have no hope for this organization to ever be anything other than an unmitigated disaster because he has no clue what he's doing. Doesn't know. He has all the money in the world, and this really should have been the first red flag for us here locally when he decided his hedge fund, Appaloosa Management, he was not going to no longer be a part of that. He was going to move on, come here to Charlotte, and focus all his time and energy on the Panthers. That's when we should have known right then and there that we were effed. Because this guy has decided this is his pet project. This is the number one thing that matters to him. He wants to win. And look what he's done. He's taken a franchise that historically was about 500 and a team that's gone to the Super Bowl twice. He's taken him and put him into the bottom of the NFL, has him as the worst franchise, a complete laughingstock. And that's not what the Carolina Panthers were. I grew up going to games with my dad all my childhood. Went to games at Clemson, went up here in Charlotte, Section 119, my entire life growing up. Saw 1-15, which honestly is kind of hilarious that you won the first game in Minnesota, then you lost the next 15. Saw Jimmy Clausen. Sat through plenty of those losses, but also sat through Jake Delhomme throwing that touchdown in the corner of the end zone I was sitting at to Ricky Prohl after he replaced Rodney Peete. I watched all those Cardiac Cat games that year. I was there for all those games throughout the years. When Jake Delhomme decided that he was going to have 6 turnovers against Arizona, I was there. So I've sat here and watched this team. I've sat there, been at stadium, enjoyed those moments with people just like you watching this show who love this team. At no point were the Panthers a joke until this guy came to town. He's done this. He's why they're unserious and why I have no faith moving forward that anything's going to change. It's David Tepper, man. Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand why you bring somebody back and then after 2 weeks you're done. And with the rule thing, same thing. If you're going to move on after 5 weeks, why bring him back in the first place? Just we'll never understand it. Like the Panthers sacrificed McCaffrey and DJ Moore to get up to number 1 overall. And after 18 games, they said that sacrifice wasn't worth it. Or it was worth to make the sacrifice, I suppose, but that sacrifice we made it. But yeah, we're done with the guy that we sacrificed those 2 players to have. Like from the beginning, it never made any sense for the Panthers to give up DJ Moore in that trade. And I understand that Ryan Poles, Bears general manager, was not going to make that move without getting DJ Moore because they also wanted to see what they had in Justin Fields. But still, it made no sense. Like, don't make the trade. If it means that you're going to have to give up a good receiver and have your quarterback have nobody in a terrible receiver class in that free agency class. Like, Thielen came in, played well, basically because he was the only option. DJ Chark was terrible. Shenault was terrible. Everyone else around Bryce was terrible last year. It was not a good situation, but who was going to have success in that situation? I'm sure Stroud would have played better, but would it be the situation right now where Houston is a playoff contender? Would the Carolina Panthers be that? I doubt it, because the roster build has been just beyond effed up from the beginning. When he fired Ron Rivera, 4 weeks left in that 2019 season, and he came out, spoke to, oh God, who the hell it was, I forget his name, who was with the Panthers at the time, sat there and talked to him about, what do we have short-term pain for long-term success? Rome wasn't built in a day. All that nonsense we heard from David Tepper. And he brings in Matt Rule. And yeah, global pandemic happens, but you look at that team, and they move on from Cam. They bring in Teddy Bridgewater. A bunch of defensive stalwarts had left that offseason. Luke Kuechly retired. Mario Addison with the Panthers North in Buffalo. A ton of those guys, also like Bruce Irvin, they all left. So they had entire defense that they had to rebuild. But offensively, they still had some solid players like McCaffrey, like DJ Moore, like Curtis Samuel. They brought in Robbie Anderson, and they had 4 players go for 1,000 yards from scrimmage during that 2020 season. The last time the offense was really not that bad. And I get it. Teddy Bridgewater was never the answer. But Tepper, 2 weeks left in that season, mutually parted ways with Marty Hurney and sat there and said that you have to be in constant pursuit of a quarterback. He let us know right then and there, I've seen enough from Teddy Bridgewater. And plenty of y'all sat there and had seen enough from Teddy Bridgewater when really you should have just been thankful that you had football in the first place in 2020. But instead, screw Bridgewater. We hate this guy. They should have just been patient, kept building the defense, the overall roster with Bridgewater, and then brought in a quarterback when it made sense. Instead, they go after Deshaun Watson. He doesn't want to be here. They land on Darnold. He was terrible because the offensive line was no good. McCaffrey gets hurt. And this is a bad team. Bad organization. They go after Baker way too late in that process there. Never had a chance to have success. And now look at them. So the roster build has been effed up ever since they fired Ron Rivera. Never had the patience to see anything through of a quarterback. And we're seeing it again today. Just had no patience with Bridgewater, had no patience with Darnold, where if you're going to trade 3 picks and exercise a 5th-year option, you got to at least give him 2 years to be the guy. And he did get injured in the preseason. I understand that. Does that happen if he's with the starters? Maybe, maybe not. But he got injured. It wasn't like he was going to be the guy, but they'd already chosen Baker to be the starter in the first place by that point in time. Anyways, heading into that final preseason game. But they never gave it a chance. Never gave anybody any time at all. They never built anything around them, never gave them the proper resources. And here we are having the same conversation that we have on an annual basis here about quarterback didn't work out. Why did it not work out? Will it work out next time? And will David Tepper allow that to happen? So it's him. That's why they're unserious. That's why we keep talking about this, and why next year and the year after that, and year after that, and year after that, and year after that, into perpetuity, we'll keep having the same conversations because David Tepper has no clue what he's doing, and he's burned this team into the ground. So patience is not going to come from him. I'm not telling y'all to be patient because I get it. I've sat here, I've watched it all these years too. I'm frustrated. I'm sick of watching this, sick of talking about it. At least I'm getting paid to do it, but I'm tired of it. So I'm not going to tell y'all to be patient because you shouldn't have to be patient. You should have an owner who knows what the hell he's doing and knows when to stop making the same mistakes over and over again. But unfortunately, that is not the case here in Carolina, and feels like it's never going to be the case as long as this guy's here, because I have no evidence to prove that it's going to be any different moving forward. Had no evidence after Rule, had no evidence after Reich, have no evidence after Darnold, Bridgewater, Mayfield, Corral, if you want to throw him in there, Walker, if you want to throw him in here, and now after Young. No, I had no evidence to think that it's going to change. So, unserious organization. Thank you, David Tepper. We'll take one more quick pause. Dave Canales had a press conference on Monday, as he always does. He's contractually obligated to do it, but clearly didn't want to answer any questions, which, again, why even go up there and do it? Take the fine instead of wasting everybody's time. He let us know kind of why he made this decision. He, putting that quotes, made this decision. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. And if you're a Panther fan, you definitely need to see that because this team has not been worth watching so far this season. Maybe they'll change with the Red Rifle. I doubt it. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Shout out to the 716, now 707 people we have here live with me on YouTube. Never had this many people live, so really appreciate all the folks out there checking out the pod. Please smash that subscribe button right there here on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe over wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do this Monday through Friday. Do it live whenever we have a big breaking news item like today with Bryce Young being benched, like last Monday with Derek Brown being out for the rest of the season. And hopefully don't have to do this again next week by having breaking news. But, breaking news is fun. It's nice to go live, talk to y'all in this live setting, and appreciate everybody here in the chat. Of course, I don't ever look at the chat when we're recording live. So I'll go back, look at it maybe afterwards. So y'all hopefully are behaving yourselves and not completely acting insane like a lot of Panther fans have been led to act. It's not you, man. It's like when the guy keeps cheating on the girl and then she doesn't trust him. Is she crazy, or did you make her crazy? Like, are Panther fans crazy, or did David Tepper make them crazy? I'm thinking a little bit of both. All love, of course. So Dave Canales on Mondays after every game has to speak to the media. It looks like it's me at 2:30 on Mondays throughout the season. And he stepped up there about 30 minutes prior. The news came out from, I think, Tom Pelissero, the NFL Network first, and it came out from Rappaport and everybody else that Bryce Young had been benched, and that the decision apparently was made by Dave Canales and by Brent Tillis and by Dan Morgan. So that's all that happens. When we knew 30 minutes later that we'd at least get some answers possibly from Dave Canales. And I thought we would, because he has been nothing but an open book. But today I saw a different Dave Canales than I've seen before. Maybe starting off 0-2, having to make this decision will change a man and not have him with that smile that we've seen before. But he was pretty short and kind of feels distressed. And maybe that's the right thing to feel based off of Tepper's history, and probably Tepper stepping in and saying, we're done here. So he said a lot of factors went into this decision. He said Andy Dalton gives him the best chance to win. Now, what were those factors? He would not go into what those factors were. He was asked several times, would not answer any specifics, said he's not going to get into it. which is a common theme anytime a big decision is made here in Carolina, that the owner or the coaches, they never tell us why they made these decisions, even though it's pretty simple why they made a decision. Bryce Young's looked terrible the first 2 weeks. The offense has not been able to move the football, and there's guys who are doing their jobs at the offensive line and the receivers, and they're frustrated, and it's 2 weeks into it. Why not try to make a change and try to salvage the season here in Carolina? He had a conversation with David Tepper. He wanted to keep that private. I'm sure the conversation was David Tepper telling Dave Canales, I brought you in here to fix quarterback. That did not work out. Now we're going to move on and go to Andy Dalton and try to go to the playoffs, because this is clearly a playoff team, right, Dave? He watched the film. That's what he said. Spoke to the people who help him make decisions, which I imagine was Brant Tillis and Dan Morgan, of course, David Tepper. And this is what they came out and said. He came out and, quote, my number one responsibility is to help the Panthers win. This move helps us to do that this week. Wouldn't get into specifics about why he made a decision in conversations that were had. Wouldn't answer whether it's a short-term break or permanent, because we saw last year. There's all the conspiracy theories about the ankle injury that Bryce Young suffered, and there's really no tape that makes you think that that actually happened in that Monday night loss against the Saints in week 2, but he did not play that week 3 against the Seahawks on the road. Dalton played through the ball like 50 times, threw for 300 bills, and was all around pretty good for the Panthers that day in that loss. And then Young came back to next week, and things still weren't all that much better. So it does not look like this is going to be one of those situations where Dalton plays and then Bryce comes back. Bryce will be the backup. So if Andy gets hurt, we're right back here watching Bryce Young, and maybe it clicks from there. Kind of hard to believe that would be the case, but maybe it does. And he came out and said, this is my decision. I don't believe it for a second, knowing how Tepper has operated here, but he says it was his decision. Wouldn't get into timelines as far as if Dalton's a starter moving forward. Just said that this week, Andy Dalton gives them the best chance to win. This is what their plan is for this week. They're focused on the Raiders, not looking ahead, and wouldn't answer what Andy Dalton even brings to the table. Wouldn't answer it. Someone asked, hey, what does he bring to the table? And he wouldn't answer that question. So I don't know. Canales looks like a guy who's under pressure already. And I think that's a Tepper thing. If Tepper brought him in, which I do believe, to work with Bryce and to do for Bryce that he did for Baker and for Geno, and after 2 weeks, Bryce Young has looked worse than he's ever looked in the previous 16 starts last season, and the owner comes up and says, I brought you in to fix this guy, and he looks worse, maybe Canales is feeling the pressure where, okay, well, we're 0-2, we got to move on. And the stats say the season's already over. I mean, there's 15 games. I'm honestly surprised by this, but got this from Yahoo. Since the NFL playoffs expanded to 14 teams in 2020, 32 franchises have started the season 0-2. Only 2 of those teams, 32, Cincinnati in 2022 and Houston last year, made the postseason. Just 5 of the 32 teams finished the season with winning records. So hardly did these teams finish with a winning record. And of course, rarely they make the playoffs. 22, Cincinnati had Joe Burrow, went to the Super Bowl. Don't think this team has a Joe Burrow playing for them at quarterback, or Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or a defense of that caliber. Houston, as we know, we don't have C.J. Stroud here in Carolina, or the offensive playmakers they have in Houston, or the just overall talent level. So I think they're probably going to have a tough time even getting to be with a 6 team to now have a winning record since the playoffs expanded it to 14 teams in 2020. So, yeah, I felt like, and I had brought up this, and I guess the last time I bring it up, I talked about the Jet situation a couple years ago with Zach Wilson, where he was bad first year. He was no much better the second year. The Jets were still able to win games. They were 6-4, and they had just lost to New England, and Zach Wilson went up to the podium, and someone asked him, do you feel like you let down the defense today? And he said no. And that ticked off the entire locker room. He lost the locker room right then and there. And Robert Saleh had no choice but to move on from Zach Wilson in a season that was still salvageable. Looking at just how the Panthers played on defense and on special teams, I just don't see how the season is going to be salvaged by putting in Andy Dalton when there's still plenty of questions about just the receiving core altogether. Like Deontay Johnson, I think he can be a good player for them. Same thing with Adam Thielen. But if those guys go down, have we seen enough from Mingo or from Leggett? I mean, Leggett showed some promise. Week 1 did not get a target on Sunday. So I still got a lot of questions there. I think they should be able to run the football. Absolutely. But are they going to be dedicated to running the ball? There's questions about Canales' commitment there. But if he feels hamstrung by the quarterback, then I guess you can only do it so much. Still plenty of questions about this team, plenty of issues. And the main overall issue for the Panthers is their overall lack of roster talent, as this was the worst team in the NFL last year. And I don't think they've done enough to change that this year to where they're going to be a competitive team and be, as far as competitive, be like in a playoff hunt. Possible maybe they can get to 6 wins like we had hoped and get to competence now. that they made the change, but it's still going to be difficult. Still a lot of issues this Panthers team has to get fixed for them to even be able to win a game on Sunday, going on the road to Las Vegas on Sunday there against the Raiders. So Bryce Young, he's done for now and probably permanently, because I just don't think you make this move after bringing in Canales. And what will his future be? That's something we can discuss further on here on the show and moving forward this season. I felt like he would at least get 2 years, because why would you bring this guy in after you got rid of Frank Reich through 11 games and you haven't really been all that patient with your coaches? Why would you bring him in and get rid of him after 1 year? Because you already were in a situation where a guy who had got no other interviews ended up being your head coach. I think a big part of that, of course, is Dan Morgan. Just still not an attractive job. Maybe to have number 1 overall pick. It could be, but who's the quarterback you're going to take? Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Shador. I mean, Dion's not going to let him come here, so we don't need to have that. We don't need to have that. We don't even need to have that conversation. So we'll see how it works out. But I'll be here to break it all down and to suffer with y'all through this Carolina Panthers season, which maybe will change, but hard to believe that'll be the case because they put in Andy Dalton. Like, that's where we're at. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, subscribe or follow the show free on YouTube, where 781 of you are here live with me right now. I'm live anytime there's live breaking news or every time after a game. So please subscribe on YouTube to check that out. If you ever miss a live episode on YouTube or any episode on YouTube, period, you can go over to check it out later on YouTube feed, or go listen to wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. It's like right there in front of you for the folks watching, of course. And at me or DM me, get your questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag tomorrow on the show. So go ahead, get those questions in. I'll answer them tomorrow. I'm sure a lot of them can be repetitive, so I may not answer your exact question, but I'll probably answer a question that you are asking me, because y'all ask basically the same questions. Because, like, hey, I get it. It's the question du jour. What the hell's going on with this franchise? Is it Bryce? Is it Dave? All that. Go ahead and get those questions at me and DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.